My first memory of my father was teaching my brother and I the powers of two. 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 2 is 4, 4 and 4 is 8. I was probably, I might have been as young as 4 years old. I could have been 7. I don't actually remember, but it's my earliest memory. My father went to college when he was 16. He graduated his undergraduate work by the time he was 19, and then he spent 3 more years at Cornell and taught when he was a graduate student. They called him the boy professor and Einstein. 8 and 8 is 16, 16 and 16 is 32, 32 and 32 is 64. My grandmother, Sonia, could see his room across the river when he was in college, she told me. And she told me he was such a good boy that he would turn out his light and go to bed every night at 10. My father told me that he would go back to his dorm room every night at 10 to turn out the light and then go out with his friends. 64 and 64 is 128. 128 is 256. My father played the clarinet in his college marching band for 6 years without a reed. The first year makes a lot of sense. When he auditioned, he went to play. The conductor was called out of the room for something. When he came back, he did not realize he hadn't heard my father play yet. He just remembered the person before. He said, "Thank you." My father left and was later put in the band. After, 6 weeks, 3 months of rehearsal, however long it took, the conductor finally realized where that sound was coming from. But this was a marching band. They needed 100 bodies to make the formations. They had already ordered the uniforms. And my father could march. He just couldn't play. So they took away the reed, he wiggled his fingers, and he marched for the rest of the year in perfect formation. That part makes sense to me. I don't understand the next 5 years. And I asked him about this, and he explained that, well, after that I was a legacy. I didn't have to audition again. I just had to sign up. My mother told me that he signed up for the band as opposed to ROTC because the ROTC uniforms were itchier. 128 and 128 is 256. 256 and 256 is 512. 512 and 512 is 1024. I found out much later, I didn't know any of this when I was growing up, that my father wrote comedy. He wrote in his college paper under the name Peter Sly. The column was called Sly Droolings. When I'd seen when I was much younger, just starting to write comedy myself, I saw a radio script that he had written, and it had a lot of the tropes of being interrupted and breaking the fourth wall and things like that. And I reread it this week, and it was quite wonderful. What my wife Kat also found was a paper that he wrote, and it was entitled "An Experimental Determination on the Coefficient of Lipstick Transfer by Direct Method." It included the line, "Tests were made primarily on volunteers by the author and 2 lab assistants working in total darkness in rooms 423 and 424. Certain of the subjects were invited to return for more intensive tests." 2048 and 2048 is 4,096. 4,096 and 4,096 is 8,192. My father collected slides. He had a room, a closet was filled with round slides, and he would force his friends to watch the slides of their vacations. And we'd play one video that I found on his computer of these slides. There are almost no people in these slides. They are all of things. 2048 and 2048 is 4,096, 4,096 and 4,096 is 8,192. My father took the New Jersey Civil Service exam after graduating college. It was an open book test. He forgot the book. He took the test anyway and got the highest score in the state. He became a civil engineer working for the state, and his first job was erasing the pencil marks that the other engineers had drawn. And that's when he started to program computers and looked to quit that job. I'm not sure how long he stayed. I think it was less than a year. And that, less than a year. He collected, along with the slides, which he, I don't know if he digitized them. I haven't found them on his computer. I looked for them for this event, but I didn't find them. But he collected stamps, which very late in his life he sold the stamp collection. He collected buttons, and I gave him many of them, and many of us gave them. Some of the buttons are displayed on the board there, and a lot of them are on your table. Feel free to take any of these if you'd like. Yeah, Marianne. He was a civil engineer. He built dams and he built bridges, and he traveled around the world doing this. DAM for dam, and also for direct access memory for both these. Yeah. You can take the buttons, also the pens that I don't know if he meant to collect them, but that he had pounds and pounds of. Feel free to take as many as you like, and when you write with them, you'll be writing with one of his pens. By the way, 8,192 and 8,192, 16,368, 16,368, 16,308, or 32,784. The first computer I know that my father programmed was called PDP-8. Those of you who are into computers, you may remember this. It had lights on the front, and the lights would show you the instructions that the computer was executing in real time. And it is only a slight exaggeration to say that my father would look at these lights and debug his computer programs by watching them. I'm not saying he could read every instruction as fast as the computer went, but he knew the patterns that they made. And so when he was in infinite loop, he recognized it, and he knew which part of the program that it was in. 32,768, 32,768, 65,536. My father traveled all over the world. When he was in the Army, he was a second lieutenant, which he loved. He worked as an engineer in the Army, and he would hitchhike on planes. If they had an open seat, he could travel around the world. He loved doing that. IBM, he traveled with. He had the honor of joining one of the international standards committees, and that allowed him to travel around the world to all kinds of conventions. And he did that until he got in a fight with a delegate from Norway. He called him an idiot to his face, and that's when my father no longer was on the International Standards Committee. And years later, he would tell me this story. Years later, the delegate from Norway was also kicked off for being an idiot. And my father told me this story, and I don't think he told it to me partially to show that he was right, but I think he also told it to me as a cautionary tale, not to call Scandinavians idiots if you want to continue to travel. My father loved the theater. As they said, it was his favorite place to sleep. I was in a play in college called Mad Woman of Chaillot, and my father was asleep in the second row, and when it came time for me to come out and juggle with my partner, John Park at the time, one of the many, we walked out and I woke him up, and the other actors were quite surprised that you could break the fourth wall like this. Being a street performer, I did not know what a fourth wall was. And he woke up and he watched our piece and then he clapped and then we went back to sleep till it was 65,536 and 65,536 is 131,072. My father had glasses his whole life. He wore hearing aids for the last couple of decades. In the last 5 or 6 years of his life, the hearing aids were connected to his phone, so if you talked to him on the phone, he would hear it through the hearing aids so that they didn't get feedback. That also allowed him to listen to podcasts through his hearing aids. If you ever had a conversation with my father in the last 6 years of his life and it looked like he was paying attention, he was listening to a podcast. $65,536 and $65,536 is $131,072. $131,072 and $131,072 is $2,144. My father loved playing card games. He loved bridge, he loved pinochle, and for the last years of his life, he constantly played solitaire and slept. $262,144 and $262,144, $524,288, $524,288, and $524,288 is $1,048,576. When I was 4 years old or 7 years old, something like that, I memorized the powers of 2 up to 100. I did this because I thought the numbers were beautiful, and because I was competing with my brother, and because I wanted my father to be proud of me. My father was a computer programmer. I was a computer programmer in college. The first program I wrote printed out the powers of 2 on sheets of paper, which I used as wallpaper for my room in college. And I would look at them all the time. When I think of these stories in bullet points and the stories that you people have all told tonight, the interest in math, the fascination with computers, the marching band, learning to dance to meet girls, his facility with tests, his incredible driving skills, his love of theater, his detailed records, the comedy writing, the preference for podcasts over people, the card games, and the life of travel, and the desire to call Scandinavians idiots. I hear these things, and I remember these things, and I realize I might as well be talking about myself. I learned so much from my father, both from what he said and what he did and who he was. Hi, Jay. Hi, Sage. My father didn't believe in a God, but he did believe he was a Jew. His first language was Yiddish. He spoke that up until the age of 4 or 5 before he started to speak English. He was bar mitzvahed at 13, and it meant the world to him. It was so important to him that both my brother and I do the same thing. My brother was very resistant to this, and I embraced it because it was the first time I got to star in a show. And it was the first and the last time I was ever paid to sing. My father didn't believe in any kind of afterlife other than the life that lives on, the people you touched. And that has to be enough. Diana. I don't think of him looking down from us from heaven or anywhere else, but I do think of him. It makes me happy and it makes me sad. It gives me joy and it gives me regret. Diana. He lived for just over 90 years, and he spent 55 of them with me, which was not enough, but it has to be. Guiding me. There's a prayer. It's on the second page of the program that my wife beautifully made and spent the past week and a half getting absolutely no sleep and not talking to anyone other than to say, "What?" The meanings of the words in Mourner's Kaddish don't matter very much to me. It's written here, it's transliterated into English and in Hebrew. What does matter to me are the words themselves, the syllables, the sounds. These are the words that my father said when his father died. Most of the words, I don't think he would have known what they meant. They're primarily in Aramaic, although they're translated, they're always written in Hebrew. They're not. The last two lines are in Hebrew, and a few of the other words are. These are the words that my two parents, Marilyn and Herbert, said when my four grandparents died, Saul and Sonia and Isidore and Libby. This is my father's yarmulke. I don't know how long he had this. And I don't know if this is the one that he wore when he read these words. I don't know how old it is. But he would have worn, if not this one that looked exactly like it. These are the words that my four grandparents said when my 8 grandparents died. I don't know their names, but I know that these are the words they said when their 16 parents died, and what those 16 said when their 32 parents died, and on through the generations. I didn't have to review or study or write down any of those numbers. They're as familiar to me now as they were when I was 7. When I'm feeling like I would rather be somewhere else, I often say them in my head. I sometimes use them when I do a mic test to annoy my partners. At some point in the past 20 generations, 2 to the 20th is that number 1,048,576. At some point in there, it's probably the case that some other religious tradition or culture joined this exponentially branching tree. And it's probably the case that some distant cousins or maybe closer cousins at some point married and pruned some of the branches. But I can clearly imagine all 2,097,150 of the people whose DNA and choices led directly to me and my brother being here today, saying these words for the family they lost and the people they loved and the parents who gave them life. And I'd like you to say them with me. If you can read the Hebrew, it's on the left. If you can read the English, it's on the right. Yitgadal, Yitgadash, Shemei Rabah. Balma, Yivra, Irite. V'yamir Malkute, Bechechion, U'v'yomechion, U'chye Echol Et Yisrael. V'agala, U'vizman, Kariv, V'yamru, Amen. V'ha'ei Shmei Rabah, Mimravach, La'am, U'lamei, Almei. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitraman, V'yitnaseh. V'yithadar, v'yithaleh, v'yithalal, Shemei. Shemei, Kedushei, Biruchu. Ve'elah, min kol biruchata, v'shirata, v'shtichata, v'nechameta, v'amrim, v'alam, v'yamru, Amen. Yehei, Shloma, Rabbah, min Shemaya, v'chaim aleinu, v'yal kol Yisrael, v'yamru, Amen. Osei shalom b'merav, Uyaseh shalom aleinu, v'yakol Yisrael, v'yamru, Amen.